you've ever been down, living in defeat. The devil had you so bound, your life felt incomplete. When you heard a word that encouraged you, you got the victory. Now come on, walk through. Nothing is the same way. Time to give the Lord all the praise.
Last 10 years we heard the Russians are coming. 20 years ago it was the niggers are coming. Okay, y'all have come.
Of the freedom of assembly, somewhere I read. Of the freedom of speech, somewhere I read. Of the freedom of press, somewhere I read. That the greatness of America is the right to protest for right. We have the right to protest for right.
The right to protest for right.
Be detrimental to your safety to continue this march, and I'm saying that this is an unlock on the safety. This march will not continue. Troopers here advance toward the group. See that they disperse. We must let the nation know, and we must let the world know that it is necessary to protest this threefold evil. The problem of the denial of the right to vote, the police brutality. We continue to face and face in its most vicious form last Sunday. Then the attempt to block First Amendment privilege. We have the right to walk the highway. We have the right to walk to Montgomery if our feet can get us there. Let us bow this prayer. And straight and black and white people.
And now the eyes of the whole nation and much of the world were focused on the tiny town of Selma, Alabama. To ensure the safety of the marchers, federal troops were called into service by President Lyndon Johnson.
These forces should be adequate to assure the rights of American citizens pursuant to a federal court order to walk peaceably and safely without injury or loss of life from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama.
Pick 'em up and lay 'em down, right, right. Pick 'em up and lay 'em down, right, right. Pick 'em up and lay 'em down, right, right.
I think the greatest victory of this period was not in terms of an external factor or external development, but it was something internal. The real victory was what this period did to the psyche of the black man. The greatness of this period was that we armed ourselves with dignity and self-respect. The greatness of this period was that we straightened our backs up. And a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. Said that we would get here only over their dead bodies. Well, and all the world today knows that we are here and we are standing before the forces of power in the state of Alabama saying we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
And it reads, for freedom, Christ has set us free. Stand fast, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. And if Dr. Lowry would permit me to use a theme today, it would be, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. The story of black America is a story of a seemingly never-ending struggle to complete an exodus from slavery to freedom. It is the story of the violent and debilitating rape of Mother Africa, a crime perpetrated by Mr. America and his European brothers. It is the story of a people snatched from a civilization that was already thousands of years old when the Arabs swept through West Africa in the 7th century. And unlike the portrayal of many of our history books, and as Roy Wood say, that's why they call it history, because that's his story. And we're going to tell our story for a little while.
All right.
But unlike the portrayal of many of our history books, our forefathers had their hands and feet shackled in iron fetters. Their backs were beaten, bruised, and busted, but their spirits were never bowed in submission.
All right.
I know we came here to talk about what happened here 20 years ago, and I'm sure that there are people much more qualified than I to do that, and they are going to do that. But I think that it is imperative for our young people to know that we have always been somebody. We've not been a bunch of nappy-headed niggas with our heads bowed and not ready to fight. Even before we reached this continent, there were many of our forefathers that before they would submit to slavery, the words of the old spiritual rang to a fortissimo level in their hearts: "Oh, freedom, oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. I'll go home to my Lord and be free." And before they would be a slave, they jumped overboard and held their breath and died with dignity to say that I am somebody. Melvin B. Tolson put it this way in his poem Dark Symphony. He says, "Black Crispus Attucks taught us how to die. Before white Patrick Hendricks bugled breath, uttered the vertical transmitting cry, 'Yea, give me liberty or give me death.' And from that day to this, men black and strong for justice and democracy have stood, still in the faith that right will conquer wrong, and time will usher in one brotherhood." We are talking about a people that has always strived to be free. Miles Mark Fisher, the author of the Negro slave songs in the United States, suggests that the Negro spiritual did more than soothe the savage beasts of slavery, but what it did was to set up a communication network whereby men could commune together, communicate together, and plan our freedom. He suggests that during certain hours they would sit around the house, and as they sat there, someone who was planning a meeting, the Dr. Lowry of that day, would start singing, "Steal away, steal away, steal away to Jesus, steal away home. I ain't got long to stay here." In other words, I'm calling a meeting, and don't be late. The business is urgent.
All right.
And he said that while they were there, the ushers at the door would be looking out of the little glass windows there. And when Master would come by, the ushers would sing, "Up above my head, I hear trouble in the air.
All right.
There must be a God somewhere."
Yes.
And when Master when Master left, they would sing the song, "Up above my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere."
Yes, sir.
And when Chestnut wouldn't come to the meeting, Hank Sanders would sit around and start singing, "I couldn't hear nobody pray. I couldn't hear nobody pray. way down yonder by myself. And I couldn't have nobody pray. Where were you, Chess? We used to even know how to talk about white folk. And they thought we were stupid because they didn't understand what we were saying. Master would give one of us a whipping. We'd look at him and say, heaven, heaven. Everybody talking about heaven ain't going there, heaven. But I'm going to walk all over God's heaven. He lets us know that the slave songs in themselves lets us know that we have always been a thinking people. Yeah. That song that they sang that gave them hope like deep river. My home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Yeah. Lets us know that there was always the hope, the planning that one day we would be free at last. Yeah. So don't anybody think that our parents were somebody to laugh at and to look down upon. We have always been somebody. Yes, sir. Yes. The Reverend Jesse Jackson.
I'm glad to be a self-evident pie. This is a hallowed occasion on which we gather, this another Lord's Day, but in a special way because of Bloody Sunday, the Sunday of the crucifixion. During the build-up for this reincarnation and resurrection of the spirit of our struggle, much has been said, and with great justification, about the work and service of John Lewis, the price he paid during that period. Another brother beloved for whom much credit is due, and who people have been asking about everywhere, has just arrived. His contribution and his body as a living sacrifice is a part of the accurately written record of that period, Reverend C.T. Vivian. Another brother beloved whose very absence is a statement today, but he is abroad on the business and in the work from this period. Brother Andrew Young is away today on a foreign mission, but his spirit is with us, and so is his wife and son, Sister Jane Young, and both. The writer says that the race does not go to the swift or to the strong, but those who hold out. If that is true, and I believe it is, if that is virtue, and I believe it is, then in that context, the greatest sin to our struggle is to walk up and ask someone in Atlanta or in Washington or New York or Chicago, please give me your autograph. Or don't you remember me? I marched with you in Selma, Alabama. I used to be in the movement. That apparently is a sin of having started a great race but did not finish. It's a sin of the shortness of breath, and maybe even a shortness of memory, and maybe even a kind of amnesia that suggests that you have forgotten the roots of the fruit that you now eat from in your job as mayor or legislator or congressman or president of college or vice president of university. Thanks be to God, some have not forgotten. Since we were here last, as a movement 20 years ago, Malcolm has gone. Well, Dr. King has gone. Well, Fannie Lou Hamer has gone. So many have dropped out in these last 20 years, but there is a man and an organization in our midst that has withstood the test of time. In financial circles, they say no matter how much you made or how much you spent, what is the bottom line, what does remain, and through all the highs and lows of the struggle, one Joseph Eccles Lowry from Mobile to Montgomery in 55, to Selma in 65, to Selma in 85, has withstood the test of time with consistency and continuity, a bona fide preacher of the gospel who's not ashamed of that gospel, a prophet of our times, and president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Reverend Joseph Eccles Lowry.
Thank you very much, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, a self-evident pilot, as named by this distinguished pastor. As we prepare ourselves to engage in this historic reenactment, I want to take just a moment on behalf of my co-chair, Geraldine Thompson. Stand up, Geraldine Thompson. Give her a hand, co-chair. Our national coordinator, John Lewis, to thank and welcome all of you to this historic occasion. It is altogether appropriate that we begin this reenactment and this celebration in the church. Our movement is rooted in the church, and as Joe Rimwood put it so eloquently in his meditation, the movement really began on Calvary. And so it's good that we're in the church. It's good that we're in this church today, because this church holds such an historic place in the heart and soul of the movement. I met yesterday briefly with some people who plan to do a campaign for the restoration and renovation of this church, a national campaign. I said to them that I am pleased to accept with John Lewis some post as honorary chair, and we're going to be asking Jess and all the others, because the beautification and renovation and sustenance of this church is not only the responsibility of these members, it's the responsibility of people who love freedom and justice everywhere. There is a young black artist. I don't know if he's here or not. Is he here? Stand up over there, who's going to paint and visualize. I've already given him the concept, but he's going to visualize this movement, the heart, with the Brown Chapel being the heart of it. And when we send you a letter or a message to send a donation, don't send what you can spare. Send in proportion to how you care about what Brown Chapel has meant to this movement. Let me just say quickly, because Jesse has a word to say and all of us have a word to say. I'm glad we are, Brother Smitherman gone. I said yesterday everything has changed and nothing has changed. And I'll say it again. He came here and gave us the key. Everything has changed. He left before we got to speak. Nothing has changed. I just want to tell him that I heard Rose Sanders and the young people singing this morning as they sang yesterday. We love all of our leaders. We love all of our fighters. And we do not plan to yield to the temptation to give in to the games that sometimes people play, trying to pit one against the other, by to talk about that ambitious superlative that can get us all in trouble, like who is the mostest and the biggest and the greatest. God is the greatest, and we're all his servants. And God said, they who are the least of these will be the greatest of these. So that's all right. Ahead of us requires the best that's in all of us to achieve the goals that are ours. Let me say quickly, I think it's appropriate we begin in the church, because this struggle, while it has political ramifications and while it has sociological and psychological implications, Basically, our struggle is a moral and a religious and a theological struggle. And that's why we're based in the church, because of what thus saith the Lord. The struggle really didn't begin on Calvary. It began at creation. Because when God created us, He made us all in His image. Black, white, yellow, red, and brown, short and tall, big and small. Learning, I'm glad you got back, Joe, to hear the rest of this message. Tell him what I said, Jesse. You see, if a man discriminates against me because I'm ignorant, that's my fault. Bill Howard, I ought to know what's going down. Bill Howard is a black man. He may not look like, stand up, Bill. He's a black man, a former president of the National Council of Churches. Give him a hand. Well, you know, we come in all shades. Integration was here long before it was legal. And it all wasn't one way either. If a man discriminates against me because I'm ignorant, it's my fault. I ought to know what's going down. If I think that it's an accident that the FBI is investigating those counties where blacks are gaining increased political power, then I'm ignorant and I deserve to be discriminated against. If a man discriminates against me because I'm ignorant, it's my fault. I ought to know what's going down. If a man discriminates against me because I'm ignorant and don't understand that what's going on in Central America is the resistance of the American white arrogance to the decolonization of a non-white hemisphere, then we are ignorant and we ought to understand that. I listened to Secretary of State Schultz yesterday talking about we can't deal with them because they got too many weapons, too many rifles, too many this, too many that. Who are we? Who are we to determine what their right? If we said everybody in this country got a right to arms, surely the sovereign nation of Nicaragua, who has Contras on their coast, supplied and supported and financed by the American nation, surely they have a right to defend themselves. If you don't understand that, then ignorance is a chain around you as surely as the chain placed there before the 1965 Voting Rights Act. If a man discriminates against me because ignorance is my fault, if a man discriminates against me because I'm dirty, it's my fault. I ought to be black, proud, and clean. I may not can wear nylon and all on, but my no-line ought to be spick and span. My language ought to be clean. My pores ought to be clean. My body ought to be clean. I ought not corrupt my soul with sin or my body with drugs and alcohol. If man discriminates against me because I'm ignorant and dirty and allow him to trick me into getting strung out on dope, it's my fault. We've got to help our young people and old people understand that being black and proud is drawing back from being sucked into the dark pit of despair, nurtured by drugs and alcohol. It is no relationship to maturity, only to immaturity, only to insensitivity to our future and ignorance of our past. If a man discriminates against me because I'm ignorant or dirty, it's my fault. But if he discriminates against me because I'm black, or brown, or red, or yellow, he discriminates against God because God made me black and there's nothing I want to do about it. So we begin this march today in the church because we come out of the love and bosom of God. Economic systems that don't measure up to moral requisites are not in accordance with the will of God. My Bible said the earth is Exxon. That's not what my Bible said. Bible said the earth belongs to computer science. That's not what my Bible said. My Bible said the earth belongs to the California cowboy. That's not what my Bible said. My Bible said the earth is the Lord. The cattle on 1,000 hills. mechanized system that does not begin there has sealed its own doom before its birth.
We must let the world know that it is necessary to protest this threefold evil. The problem of the denial of the right to vote, the police brutality. We continue to face in its most vicious form last Sunday. Then the attempt to block First Amendment privilege. We have the right to walk the highway. We have the right to walk to Montgomery if our feet can get us there.
When my hands are raised.
Good morning. My name is Richard Bowden, owner of Collective Import, your one-stop accounting service. Tax season has just begun, January through April 15th. Get prepared. Get your information to your tax professional as quickly as possible. If not someone else, come to Collective Import, your one-stop accounting office. We will help you, we will serve you, we will give you the quality that you need to make sure that you understand your tax position. Thank you for listening to us on this channel. Collective Imports, 2025 East 4th Street. Phone number is 834-4045. Stop by, we'll be glad to assist you.
I want to thank Miller's Funeral Home coming on board with us as one of the sponsors of our television broadcast. Miller's Funeral Home is located in Selma, Alabama at 608 St. Philip Street. Brother Randall Miller, he's not a member of New Beginnings, but he is a member of the body of Christ, and we want to thank him for sharing in this broadcast with us. You can reach him at his telephone 874-9081.
Have you ever been down, living